أنا مرض أنا الداء ومني تأتي أوجاع وليس لمد.
With regard to who built it could be Adam alayhi salam, we will start, it could be Ibrahim alayhi salam, could be Yaqub alayhi salam, either one of them. But we begin the history of Al-Aqsa and Bayt al-Maqdis begins from Ibrahim alayhi salam. Ibrahim alayhi salam himself was born in Iraq, in a place called Ur, near the Furat river, the Euphrates. And this is where he had confrontation with Nimrud. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Ibrahim alayhi salam to make hijrah. He made hijrah, he left. Where did he go? He went to Palestine. He went to an area called Hebron. Hebron is called what? The Arabic name for Hebron is Al-Khalil. Al-Khalil takes the name from Ibrahim alayhi salam because he is Khalil Allah. So Al-Khalil is the correct name for Hebron. This is where Ibrahim alayhi salam he settled. And then he went to Egypt. Then he came back to Jerusalem, to Bayt al-Maqdis. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then ordered Ibrahim alayhi salam to take Hajar and Ismail alayhi salam and go and take them to Makkah. And then later on he came back and joined them and they built the Kaaba. But when he left them in Makkah, and nobody else was there, nothing existed, he came back to where? He came back to Palestine, to Jerusalem. Ishaq alayhi salam was born, and Ishaq alayhi salam would worship in Al-Qudus in Jerusalem in Masjid al-Aqsa. Ishaq alayhi salam, his son was Yaqub alayhi salam. Yaqub alayhi salam, he opened up this place, Masjid al-Aqsa, to everyone for them to come and worship. Anybody who was a muwahhid, anybody who accepted and believed in Tawheed, they were allowed to come and invited to come and to worship in Masjid al-Aqsa. So Yaqub alayhi salam opened it up, and this is why people they say that Yaqub alayhi salam was the one who established Masjid al-Aqsa, and he opened it to people as a masjid. Yaqub alayhi salam, as we should know, had 12 sons. And what was the story of his sons? One of them was Yusuf alayhi salam. When Yusuf alayhi salam, his brothers threw him in the well, people found him and they took him to, when he went to Egypt, he ended up, obviously cutting the story very, very short, the details aren't necessarily relevant. He went to Egypt, he became governor in Egypt. And then when his brothers returned to Egypt, he recognized them, they didn't recognize him. And he said, go bring your father, bring everyone and come back. And when they all came, he told them that I am your brother Yusuf. And who came? Yaqub alayhi salam. And the name of Yaqub alayhi salam, by the way, his other name is Isra'il. Yaqub alayhi salam's other name was Isra'il. This is where the Yahud, they get this name from. They call him Jacob in English. Isra'il alayhi salam. So he came with all of his children. So Bani Isra'il comes from Yaqub alayhi salam. Bani Isra'il means the children of Yaqub alayhi salam, his descendants. So all of his 12 sons, his children, they all came and they went to Egypt. And then they settled in Egypt with Yusuf alayhi salam. Now bearing in mind obviously his sons and their children and so on, this is now Bani Isra'il. They lived there for 400 years. Bani Isra'il, after the death of these Anbiya, they began to then deviate in terms of their belief. And this is a common trait they have. Always taking the path of misguidance, lying and cheating and worshipping idols and shirk and all of this kind of thing. So what happened was for 400 years they were now in Egypt. Because they deviated, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished them. They became slaves for the people of Misr, for the people of Egypt. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then sent to them Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam came to Egypt, to Bani Isra'il, to guide them to the haqq. Musa alayhi salam then took Bani Isra'il all the way to the Red Sea. And they crossed the Red Sea. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them. So he took them, Bani Isra'il, from Egypt. Now remember, they've left Palestine. Palestine now is being looked after, or is in the control of the Jabbabira, or the Kan'aniyun, or the Philistines, people of Philistine. So Musa alayhi salam now wants to take them back to Palestine, back to the sacred land. So when he arrives there, he asks them to enter. And what do they say, Bani Isra'il? After they've crossed the Red Sea, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them. He's saying, let's go. They said, no, we don't want to go. Because there are people there who are Jabbariyun, people who are big, physical physiques, strong. Yeah, they're going to defeat us. They'll wipe the floor with us. They were scared, cowards. This is another trait of those Yahud. They didn't want to enter. فَاذْهَبْ أَنْتَ وَرَبُّكَ فَقَاتِلَا إِنَّهَا هُنَا قَائِدُونَ. You and your Lord go. They said to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, you and your Lord go. إِنَّهَا هُنَا قَائِدُونَ. We are going to be those people who stay behind. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevented them from entering into Palestine, Bayt al-Maqdis. And they were left wandering in the desert for 40 years. Wandering the desert. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah He said, barely. He said, this is the nature of the Yahud. He said, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them and parted the Red Sea and they crossed, he said their feet hadn't even dried and they already started worshipping the calf at the time of Musa alayhi salam. This is how they were. Because they lived as slaves in Egypt. They lived, with shirk and idolatry. So this was inherent in them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then banished them for 40 years, wander in the desert. The lost tribes of the Israelites. Go and wonder. Why? What was the wisdom behind it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He tells us in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O you who believe, مَنْ يَرْتَدَّ مِنْكُمْ عَنْ دِينِهِ فَسَوْفَ يَأْتِ اللَّهِ بِقَوْمٍ." That if you turn your back on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will replace you with another qawm, another set of people. So the wisdom behind it is what? For 40 years, this generation will die out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will replace them with a new generation of people. And after 40 years, when this new generation of people, because these people weren't worthy of victory, they weren't capable of victory, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevented them from entering until they were finished, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaced them with a new generation. Only then were they then allowed to come back into Jerusalem. Musa alayhi salam, the story is narrated in Hadith in Bukhari. When the angel of death came to him, you see, he hit the angel of death and took out his eye. The angel of death went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and said, this servant of yours, he refuses, he doesn't want to die. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, return to him and tell him, put your hand on the back of an ox, and however many hairs your hand is able to cover, for each hair you will live for that 1 year. So he went, he told Musa alayhi salam this. Musa alayhi salam, he said, okay, and after this what happens? He said, after this you will die, because everyone and everything will come to an end at some point. So he said, if that's the case, then what's the point waiting this long? He said, there's no point. If I'm going to die, then I may as well die now if my time is over. But he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for one thing. He said, if the death is going to come, let it come now. But he requested, he said, Ya Allah, let me die close to the sacred land, so much so that it would be a distance of a stone's throw away from. You see, Musa alayhi salam, he wants to die in this area or close to this sacred land of Al-Quds, Bayt al-Maqdis. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, if I was there, I will show you his grave below the red sand hill on the side of the road. I'll show you exactly where he was buried. Many prophets are buried there, but like we said, we don't know exactly where they were. So now the tribes of Bani Isra'il in the desert, they've been replaced with the next generation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends amongst them a man by the name of Yusha ibn Nun, alayhi salam, another prophet from amongst them. Yusha ibn Nun, he was commanded to take Bani Isra'il and to enter back into Jerusalem, Al-Quds. And he was told to enter before the end of the day. So he takes Bani Isra'il. Now Bani Isra'il, hesitantly they are going towards this area, this land. By the time they get there, it's Salat Asr time. So it's almost towards the end of the day. Yusha, he looks up to the sun. He says, you are receiving orders, and I too am receiving orders from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are receiving orders, what? To rise and to set at a fixed time. I've received an order, commanded to go and enter into Jerusalem and to conquer it and to take over. So he said, Ya Allah, stop the sun for me so that I can fulfill this mission. Because if darkness comes, then these people will have time to prepare and to attack us again. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevents the sun from setting, because Yusha ibn Nun, leading Bani Isra'il, can then come into Al-Quds and take over Jerusalem. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith, the sun has never stopped for any man except for Yusha ibn Nun when he wanted to conquer Bayt al-Maqdis. You see, when you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on your side, it doesn't matter even if all of the odds are against you. You have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on your side, numbers, weapons, artillery, all of this makes no difference. If you have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, victory will be yours. Yusha ibn Nun, what does he do? Ask Allah to halt daylight for him, the sun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers his dua. And as a result, they then become victorious and they enter into Jerusalem. For Bani Isra'il, when they are in Quds, Jerusalem, they become their usual selves, their traits. They carry them throughout the generations. Oppressing those people who are not from Bani Isra'il, being discriminatory towards them, treating them with injustice, prejudice against them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested them again by sending them a tyrant by the name of Jalut. Jalut in English is called Goliath. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested them with this tyrant. He came, he destroyed their villages. He cast out their families, took them out of their homes, displaced them, taking their women and their children, kidnapping them, taking their wealth. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Dawood alayhi salam Dawood alayhi salam was one of the descendants from one of the sons of Yaqub alayhi salam. Yaqub alayhi salam, he had 12 sons. Yusuf alayhi salam was amongst them, Binyamin and Judah. Judah is Yehuda. Yehuda was one of the sons of Yaqub alayhi salam. From the descendants of Yehuda, Judah, who came Dawood alayhi salam. He was a soldier, a mujahid in the army of Saul, Talut. He fought vigorously to the point where this tyrant, this great big Fir'aun tyrant, Goliath, he defeats him and he kills him. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودَ جَالُوتَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Dawood, he kills Jalut. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a result, gave him the kingship. He became the leader, he became king of the people of Bani Isra'il in Jerusalem. Dawood alayhi salam, bearing in mind through this time, the Masjid al-Aqsa has been destroyed. Whilst the time that Bani Isra'il left this area, they were in Egypt, and then in Egypt they were wandering in the desert before they came back. All of these hundreds of years, the Masjid al-Aqsa has been destroyed. Bayt al-Maqdis, there's nothing there anymore. So Dawood alayhi salam, he begins to start rebuilding Masjid al-Aqsa. Dawood alayhi salam passes away before it's completed. Sulaiman alayhi salam, the son of Dawood alayhi salam, he then comes and he finishes off the job by building Masjid al-Aqsa. He himself was born in Jerusalem. He carried on until he was finished. The rule of Sulaiman alayhi salam and his father Dawood alayhi salam lasted about 73 years between the both of them. And it's these Yahudis who claim that Sulaiman was the one originally who built the masjid, calling it Solomon's temple, the temple of Solomon. And this is what they're trying to uncover even until today. Amr ibn al-As reported hadith in Muslim of Imam Ahmad. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, after Sulaiman alayhi salam built and beautified Masjid al-Aqsa. Now bearing in mind, Sulaiman alayhi salam had the control of the jinn also. And the jinn, one of their traits is that they have huge amount of ability, power. Okay? So they imagine what they could build for Sulaiman alayhi salam at that time. Sulaiman alayhi salam asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for three things. He was given two of those three. One, he said, whenever I judge between the people, between two disputing parties, allow my judgment to be in line with the hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This one was accepted. Secondly, he said that the kingdom, give me a kingdom like nobody else has had before me and nobody after me will have. And he was given the kingdom. And thirdly, he said that, and that anybody who prays in this masjid after having left it would come out as though their mother has just given birth to them, meaning their sins will be completely wiped away. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants this gift to us. And indeed, this is one of the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted to the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. After Sulaiman alayhi salam, Bani Isra'il, they began to deviate again, going back to their shirk, their idolatry, killing many of the Anbiya. Zakaria alayhi salam, his son Yahya alayhi salam, they tried to kill Isa alayhi salam. So this is how they are. It isn't until then, 587 BC, the Babylonian king, Bukhtanasir, Nebuchadnezzar in English they call him, he came and then he lays siege to Jerusalem, Bayt al-Maqdis, and he ransacks Jerusalem, killing, taking over the city, destroying Masjid al-Aqsa and enslaving the people of Bani Isra'il. And they remain in this state. So now Masjid al-Aqsa is destroyed again after Sulaiman alayhi salam. They remain in this state until then the Persian king Cyrus, he comes and then he liberates it and he allows Bani Isra'il to then return back to Palestine and to continue worshiping. Then what happens is, and obviously we're skimming through history, so it gives us a good picture to understand where we are, what we are all about today. You see, then you have the two superpowers of the world. You have the Persian Empire, Bilad al-Faris, and Bilad al-Rum, the Roman Empire. And both of these two empires are in rivalry with each other, contesting against one another. And it isn't until the year 70, after Isa alayhi salam, when the Romans, they captured Jerusalem. Prior to that, they captured Jerusalem and they destroyed Masjid al-Aqsa. This is after Isa alayhi salam, 70 years. 65 years later, the Romans then massacre Bani Isra'il in Jerusalem. They dig the foundations of the masjid in 135, in the year 135. And the Romans have by this time accepted Christianity as their belief. So their enmity towards the Jews is intensified because they see them as killers of the Prophet, killers of Isa alayhi salam. And then it isn't until 614 that the Persians then take control of Al-Qudus, Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem from the Romans. And this is where the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is now present. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you see, he understood the importance and significance of Al-Quds, to the point where he was preparing the Muslims in order to take back the Bayt al-Maqdis. This land is not for the Persians, it is not for the Romans. This land is for those Muslims, those muwahideen, those people who declare La ilaha illallah. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he had his eyes on Al-Quds, on this sacred land which belongs to the Muslims. So he prepares an army, even to the point of his deathbed, the army of Usama, to go and to fight against the Byzantines, the Romans, in order to go and liberate Al-Quds. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he would say that it is more beloved to me, and this is after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, when he said, don't delay the army of Usama, because the army of Usama was ready to go and to fight against the Romans to take back Bilad al-Sham. Even until the time of Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, where he sends armies to go and to fight against these people, 12,000 led by Abu Ubayd ibn Jarrah, who then take over and they conquer the parts of Bilad al-Sham, Damascus and Homs, and then they surround Al-Quds, and they want to enter into it without any fighting. The patriarch of the Christians of Jerusalem, Sophronius, will give you the keys to the city. You can enter without any fighting, without any bloodshed, but we will only give it to the ruler of the Muslims. We will only give it to your ruler. Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And Umar, he enters, where he takes his servant, he takes very few belongings, and they ride on this one beast, and they take it in turns. And as they're entering into Jerusalem, on the Quds, it just so happens that he is walking and his servant is riding on the animal. When the people of Al-Quds, they see him from a distance, they see him coming, they see that this is exactly what has been foretold in their scriptures. That a man would come of a certain build, of a certain appearance. He would be wearing clothes with patches on his clothes. Umar ibn Khattab, he wouldn't replace his clothes, he would just patch them up. He would have patches on his clothes. He would be barefooted. He will be walking and his servant will be riding, entering into Al-Quds. Umar ibn Khattab, those people, they came to him, they give him the keys, they say, this is exactly what has been told in our scriptures. So this is what would happen. And Farooq, he begins to cry. He can't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about him in such a way in previous scriptures, even before he was born, even before he entered into his dunya.